Hi, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Katrina Raspel and Friends. And, you know, when I say Katrina Raspel and Friends, I choose people that I know pretty well. And some people, John Beckett, for instance, is a mentor. I love John. I feel like I know him better than I do. I've got this sort of false sense of familiarity with John just because I've quoted him so many times and read so much of his work. And I have so much respect for him. Tomas is the same. I feel like I know him better than I actually do in real life just because I've been to so many of his presentations and we've been buddies for a long time. But a good many of the people that I interview on this channel are just really dear personal friends of mine. This is one of them. This is Bramwell Murphy. And say hi, Bram. So this is Bram, and Bram and I don't use this term loosely, go way back. And Bram was a part of my circle for many, many years until we connected with her partner. Uh, how long has it been, Bram? A year and a half? No,
Uh,
Alan. Was it a year ago?
yep, something like that. Is that it was November 2023
Yeah. Oh,
was when
two
we did the
years.
big move. Yeah, so it's been 2 years. Yep.
I remember
Time's weird and wibbly wobbly.
I remember there was some question that year about will they or won't they be able to make it to Samhain, and you did. You went above and beyond, and you got here, and we were so glad to be able to circle with you another time because you and Beck were just such important members of our circle, and we appreciated that so much. And so you have seen us through a lot of iterations, and we've worked in a lot of different places. We have done, I couldn't count how many rituals together. And you are one of our CUSP practitioners who's out there loose in the world, spreading the gospel of CUSP to Minnesota. And we met. You weren't too far out of high school, I don't think.
Not at all. I was like 2009. I
Yeah.
was still like I was out of high school, but only just.
So 2009, so that is 16 years. So I have known you half your life
Yeah.
about.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Dang. Yeah. No kidding.
Wow. Yeah, for sure. So I have now the words that I use to describe you on our little blurb, our marketing, is that you're a green witch because I have never known you to be, other than your partner, more passionate about anything than you are about plants.
No.
And you have an amazing green thumb and you love your babies. And I said, practitioner, pagan, social activist. In social activism, you wear a lot of different hats. And you're just Bram. That's that's the summation. What do you want to say about who you are in the world? Anything?
Oh goodness. Uh, who I am in the world is continuously evolving. Is that there are sort of core values and core tenets, like a foundation that's consistent. I really enjoy teaching. I really enjoy learning. Um, I enjoy people not in quantity but in quality. Like I'm not a big circle of friends kind of person. I'm a few very like close people kind of person. Um, but the various sort of routes and places that takes me is variable. So I have it's kind of like I have a consistent foundation, but who I am in the world keeps evolving. I having moved from growing up in California, having moved to Minnesota, I Mr. Magoo'd my way into being a paralegal, which is not something that I imagined for myself, but is working and is a good fit, and I get to use one of my two useless creative credentials, and I get to train people, which is meaningful. It isn't the same as working a botanica, but kind of mirrors that work in that no one goes to court when things are going great. Just like when they go to see a witch, they go to seek magical help when things are going sideways. So
Mm-hmm.
there's a parallel there where whether it's mundane or magical, it's with people who are having a very bad time, which is not to make light of their situation, but just sort of interesting how the energy flowed that way.
Amazing. And it's such a good fit because one of the things you I would say unique to you, but really a lot of people have this going on in their minds is your brain is like a, an enormous, I wouldn't say Jenga, but a one of those games where it just fits into place and you've got to find the right place where it fits. Your brain is this enormous Rolodex sort of, and you have so many, such a huge capacity to make to retain information, which would be great. And you're also one of the most compassionate people I have ever met. So you are the
Oh,
person I would want to be looking at my case file, I think.
oh, thank you.
Sure. And so I think that's a really wonderful fit. Much, much greater than a Sequest was, I think. But that was a good one too in some ways.
Definitely learned a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, good for you. That is just wonderful. So, one of the things that's come into my mind, and I know that you and I have talked about this before, and we even talked about a little bit in the pre-show. You know that I'm rewriting the CUSP book, folks. Don't buy the CUSP book yet. Better one's coming. Promise you, it's going to be worth the wait. But one of the things about CUSP is that it relates strongly. I'm going to say two things. One, to the land spirits of where you are, and two, to the harvest cycle of where you are. And we have, I guess, what you would call a template or a proposed harvest schedule. But the harvesting in Minnesota has got to be very different than the landscape in California. You want to talk about that a minute? How's that
Oh yeah.
adapting going?
No, it's learning new stuff all the time. Um, Something that I tried that was new to me is in California. It's so if you're familiar with USDA growing zones, they basically speak to when different regions have frost dates. California is like where we were is like zone 9. Here it's zone 4A, which is a huge difference. And then that's just when the frost comes in. That's not the biome. And California, actually, both California and Minnesota have incredibly diverse and cool biomes, but it's a huge switch. So there's that. And then something I tried having moved here is I attempted to do a physical planting along with the metaphysical planting. So when Ostara came around and it was time to plant our beans or corn, all of those guys, the time frame in which those plants grew and the needs that they needed to be cared for were radically different. So
Wow.
just watching the progress was different, and just the difference in ambient humidity, because California is so arid, it lends itself fantastically well to things like peppers and anything Mediterranean. But up here, people grow tropical plants as annuals.
Wow.
I During the summer, people had monsteras and alocasia outside, and I was like, "What?" Like it was cool, but it was definitely very different.
Yeah. Now, when we're talking about harvesting your goals and manifesting your goals, do you see any shift with how the goals manifest since the harvest cycle is different?
I have, but I think in my the data size, the data sample is not very big because it's just Beck and myself and a handful of friends. And while 2 years is getting to be multiple cycles, because CUSP is moving up that spiral pathway, it's you're building on a foundation year after year. It's hard to know what it looks like long term. But from what I can see right here, right now, at the end of 2025, the impression I'm getting from my harvest so far is that they're about building a foundation. And there's a lot of setting forth manifestations that either may not ever come to fruition or are going to come to fruition 3 or 4 years down the line rather than in the immediacy. There's not a lot of right now magic
Gotcha.
happening with it.
And it really is that way when you're starting a new cycle. you're not completely rebuilding, but it's pretty close to it, and figuring out how to do it differently in this area. So one of the things that is more unique about you than about most pagan practitioners, I would say, not just CUSP, but pagan practitioners, is that you have a partner who is very actively working with you. And I do with Eric as well. And we see so many practitioners whose partners are either unaffiliated, they're supportive, but they're not especially interested, but they're just very removed from their practice. And that's definitely not the case with Beck, would you say?
Yeah, no, it's really nice. I think both of us and probably a lot of people have sort of seen the difference between what it's like to have an interest or a practice and to have someone who is supportive of those pursuits versus someone who isn't, and what a difference that makes.
Oh, for
And
sure. Yeah. And what another thing you and I have in common is that we were both in relationships prior to our current relationships where there wasn't a whole lot of support in that
oh yeah,
regard. My ex actually cited it as one of the reasons for divorce, not because he was hostile about witchcraft or Wicca, but only because he couldn't relate to it at all and felt like that kind of the roads were so split, and that the spirituality was part of that. So he definitely was not on board. And so I knew one of your previous relationships that um, your partner would show up, but wasn't really into what we were doing.
right. Show up physically but wasn't present for what it was actually about, but begrudgingly there in person.
And another thing in common, well, we're just racking them up here, is that those relationships that we had were challenged in other ways too. And
Yeah.
it's really, so this is something that people go through, and there's so many people that are in relationships with people they really genuinely care about and feel close to and love, and they're just struggling. They're just trying so hard to make it work. And sometimes it feels like you're the only person that's working and trying to carry that emotional load. And then you just hit that point where you're not carrying the load anymore. You're just putting it down. And yeah, I think we both kind of had that experience as well. So I mean, your relationship with Beck is very different than your
Oh
previous.
yeah.
Yeah. But you knew Beck before those relationships and stuff. Is that right? Am I remembering correctly?
About concurrently, I met my ex in high school, and I also met Beck like tail end of middle school, beginning of high school. Fia is kind of the connecting tissue in terms of the Kevin Bacon of our
I was
degrees.
going to say that. Yes, absolutely. And with so many people, there's a lot of Fia connections there. So those of you who don't know, Fia is another part of our circle group and is a CUSP high priestess in her own right. And so I just think of Fia as the conduit because so many people kind of meet us through that street there, that connection.
Oh,
So
100%.
so you were really active in the pagan community here in California and actually ran my booth at festivals brilliantly. You did a great job with that, and were really in tune. I would say you pretty much had your finger on the pulse of Sacramento pagan community and that area. And you also are very active in the queer community and
Oh,
have a lot of really amazing compassion for those of us who are not in that community but want to be advocates and want to support, and understanding all the ways we're not doing it very well or that we're getting in our own way. I always appreciate the compassion and the gentleness you showed as I tried to old lady my way through. I don't want to say the minefield because it was a lot of caring involved, but just making sure that I said all the things that were good and didn't say the things that weren't. And so you've just been such an amazing advocate for that community, and I appreciate that. I'll bet, I think we've talked about this too. I'll bet that that experience has been similar to your pagan experience as well. That those lives kind of mirror each other.
Oh, 100%. And they have been in constant dialogue from the beginning, I think, is that um, so a lot of things about, and this is something that was touched on with the interview with Nelta too, that when you're growing up in a culture and society that doesn't have a place for you, or where you don't feel like you fit, but you might not have the vocabulary to know what's different, and you start to sort of go on the journey of trying to figure out, well, why doesn't this fit? What other ways of being are there? A lot of times, things like being queer or belonging to another marginalized group and paganism are all in alignment because what they have in common is existing outside of what sort of the dominant superstructure of American culture expects of people, what the expected default looks like. So if
Mhm.
you're already questioning, why am I not neurotypical? Why is Christianity not resonating with me? Why are expectations around gender and sexuality, why do they feel off? Like, if you're willing to question one, you're more likely to be open to inquiring about the others too.
It's really interesting that you say that because my brain started doing the twirly thing as you were mentioning that, where I wondered, and I can think about this in terms of my own kids in some way, and you're one of my kids, but the um, the idea that if you are in multiple marginalized communities, does it now? I'm thinking specifically about I'm in the queer community, I'm in the pagan community, I'm neurodiverse. What would you say that it more they complement each other, or does it just become heavier?
I think they complement each other, and I don't think the implication of it getting heavier. I don't think it's something with mass that gains weight. I think it's more things that interconnect. If that makes sense, I'd be super curious to know what like well any of your previous guests to know what Nelta and Elena
Yeah.
think about that.
And viewers, you too. If you are in multiple marginalized spaces and you're navigating those spaces, whether you feel like you're navigating them successfully or you're just making a balls up of all of it, we don't care. What we want to know is how do those marry up together? And are they a successful connection or are they struggling with each other? And do you just feel like you're having to mask here, 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 and here? Or do you feel like it allows you more areas to be who you are and to be yourself? One of the biggest situations of that I can think of is a guy that I never circled with him, but he was prominent in our Crossroads community, who was a practicing pagan and actually led circles, but was also Mormon IRL. and and I always wondered the the um the coding that must have gone on to do those switches. Did you have any insight into that? I know that I think you knew that person better than I did.
Mm-hmm.
Was that a
Yeah,
struggle, do you think, for them?
I'm debating how much
We
I
gotta we
can
gotta
or should.
protect confidentiality, but we can speak in generalities.
That's what I was thinking too. He also still posts on YouTube, and I follow a lot of his content. And he's a very sweet man.
He is.
Um, but I think he also like I think intersectionality is an important thing to think about,
Mm-hmm.
and no one person is ever just one thing, even if
Right.
they happen to fit into more of what society expects of them. Like, even if you're talking about sort of the cultural default of straight white male, those are three different
Mhm.
attributes, and that doesn't even factor into, did you grow up rural? Did you grow
Yeah,
up rich or poor? Uh, like, what your socioeconomic factors look like.
right.
Like, there's still more to it. Having spoken with him personally, I know that there was a lot of stuff to come to terms with, but I'm also very aware that there's that with any denomination of Christianity and pagan praxis are not mutually exclusive, because a
Mhm.
lot of, I think of a lot of Catholic magic. You have things like sensoria,
Sure.
have a lot of synchronicity with not synchronicity. I'm thinking of syncretism. You
Syncretism,
have
yeah.
yep, you have a lot of syncretism where you have Catholic folk magic, you have Santeria, Sanctismo, you have
Voodoo, yeah.
hoodoo and voodoo. Like,
Mhm.
the sort of subculture and superculture have always been in dialogue with each other, and in the same way that there's not a hard line between neurotypical and neurodivergent,
Mhm.
there's not necessarily a hard line between, you have to be Christian, you have to be pagan, or you have to be Christian, or you have to be a witch, and you can't be both. There's a lot of Christian witches. They just have to personally navigate their orthodoxy with their
Mhm.
orthopraxy and figure out what their relationship with Jesus or the Holy Spirit or their divine faces that they're working with, what, like, that they have to be defined personally, like what that means to that person. But I mean, I'm pretty libertine when it comes to that too, where I feel like religion and spirituality is between the practitioner and universe or source, and it's, I'm not going to say it's not my circus or my monkeys, because you're right to swing your fist ends at my face, but like, it's, I think that is and should be a personal journey.
I love that. And one of the strongest practitioners that I know identifies as Christio-pagan specifically. And I watched her journey to navigate that, because at first she came to me for Platica. So we were talking and about whether or not these things were compatible. And when I said, well, Christio-pagan is a word, that's a thing that exists, she was so thrilled. And she said, it's not just me. No, 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 it's not just you. It's a lot of people. And so you have to find your way around what your beliefs are in relation to the doctrine that you've got. You have to work through what of this is um, allegory and what is instruction, and what is instruction disguised as allegory. And you've got to see how that fits into what feels right and organic to you. But you are so right that who are we to get in the middle of one person's relationship to their higher power? That's very personal. And I think it was on Green Egg Forum that there was this huge blow up, because about half the people were saying you those are mutually exclusive. You can't do that. There's too much denigration on both sides. And one of the things I noticed in the many pagan communities that I've interacted with is a lot of times pagans are very wounded by the Christian church. So they're kind of hostile about it. And so to their mind, there is no combining. And that has to be healed in order to have that kind of understanding. So it can be an interesting road to navigate, but absolutely very rewarding.
Oh, and that's 100% correct. I do think a lot of the cognitive dissonance or hostility about sort of the relationship between the pagan community and Abrahamic religion is religious trauma. There's a lot
Right.
of us who had traumatic Christian upbringings, and a lot of it, as we get older, becomes okay. how much of this is actually the contents of scripture or the spiritual essence of the message, and how much of this is the political polity of the church.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
that's a tough one.
That is a tough one. One of the things that is more, what can I say, galvanized on one side than it is on the other with those particular spiritual paths is the first question I'm going to ask you. What do you think happens when you die?
Ooh, to steal Delana quoting Keanu Reeves, on the material plane, the people who love you will miss you. And then in terms of what happens to us after my brother died, I got really into reading and listening about NDEs, so reading Life After Life and Dances in the Dark and books like that. Um, the life review is a theme that I think is really neat. And while I, as a living person, can't know for sure, I think that's pretty cool and a common enough description that I feel pretty confident in it being a thing.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of what happens to our consciousnesses or soul singular or plural, um, I think of Zay Frank has a true facts about the mantis shrimp that I think of, where it's like, okay, imagine a color you cannot imagine. Now imagine that 9 more times. It's hard to know what the experience of being dead is like, because as living people, we experience the world through our brain and our senses and our skin and our organs. So knowing what it's like to be sensate without those, we don't really have context while we're in a flesh form necessarily.
That is wonderful. Very thoughtful, and I enjoy that. I'm gonna sit with that tonight and play with it a little bit. And now that we're at Samhain, we're so close to that feeling of the end of the year is dying, and the idea that death is nearby at that time. This will be a good time to do that kind of contemplation.
Yeah.
So, when you look back on your life, well, now we have a lot of people that influence us through trauma. We have a lot of people that influence us by modeling behaviors that we don't want to emulate. People that have hurt us influence us and change who we are. But who in your life, and you've known a lot of people, who influenced you positively?
You and Eric are definitely up there. Like magical parents, absolutely. You taught me that praxis can be practical and down to earth and sensible and empathic. So I treasure you and Eric very, very dearly. You are
And
some
we
of my
do.
absolute favorite humans. Oh, thank you. Um, my biological parents and grandparents also. I'm fortunate enough to have people I was born to who are also extremely awesome.
Oh,
Um,
good. I didn't actually know that.
yeah, no,
That's
it
great.
helps. No, my both of my parents are very, very sweet people, both very generous and both people who value nurturing and educating. My dad's a science teacher and a peer advocate, so that's a big thing that he pushes for. And then my grandfather is a Methodist pastor, so that's an interesting contrast too. But he's also a really rad dude. So I might be among a minority of pagans who did not have a negative association with Christianity growing up, because I happened to be around Christians who were actually really awesome people, and I think that was nice.
I love
But
that.
they
I love
also,
that for you. That
yeah.
is wonderful. So when I just am mind blown trying to think of how I would answer this for you, which fortunately I don't have to do. Um, I have been privileged to watch your evolution over the last 15 years or so. 16 years, I think we figured out. Was it 16 years we just did? Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yep.
So What in that time are you the most proud of? What do you look at and go, wow, that was hard, but I aced it? Or that was really good and I feel great about what I accomplished with that?
Ooh, a lot of them are more like little pepperings of things, more so than like singular monumental events. But graduating college was a big one because I was the
Mm,
first person in my mother's family to do so, which is cool. Um, there was uh, identifying that I was suicidally depressed and intervening on my own behalf before putting a period point on this life. And I think that one definitely deserves to be up there
oh, yeah.
because I wouldn't have continued otherwise. So that one's really, really important. And lots of other things too. Volunteering in hospice and college was fulfilling for me and for the people who are in hospice, and really shifted my mindset significantly. Being ordained with you and Eric was a huge honor and something that I really, really cherish. That was a major milestone. Um, as much as I value each job that I've had vocationally from the perspective of everything is a learning experience, everything is a lesson, uh, I'm really happy with having Mr. Magooed my way into being a paralegal.
Yeah.
And something I was doing for Samhain, kind of in preparation for Yule, is I made sort of a year in review of like, okay, what are things I accomplished this year that I'm proud of? And there was a lot of little events I did throughout the year that I found myself being proud of. Like there was an event for Ida Hobbit or Day Against Hate. There was National Coming Out Day. There was a Pride Week thing where I'm like, I never thought I would be an event organizer, but that was cool. And I was proud of myself for managing to pull that off. So quite a few, like it's less lots of big things and lots of like a nice charcuterie board of little things.
I think those are wonderful. And it troubles me sometimes. There's a reason I put that question in here. It troubles me that our society tends to minimize feeling proud of yourself and tries to get you to be humble and just blow off the accomplishments. It pushes us to be accomplished, but then it wants us to minimize what we did. And I think that, we earn that. And who else should be more proud than how you feel about yourself? Of, yeah, I love that. I love that for me. I'm glad I did that. And that's a wonderful, wonderful assortment there. That's great. So, this is much lighter. What movie or TV or podcast or book or what are you into lately?
Ooh, lots of podcasts and books mostly. I enjoy TV, but I'm bad at making time for it just because I'm kind of restructuring my life, having moved to a new place and have lots of new career and moving pieces and stuff. Um, but I mean, of course, you have your books, which I love, and then there's yeah, got that one too. So of course we have the lovely Katrina Rasbold, but then there's also Fabian McKinsey, who I enjoy quite a bit too. They have been taking scholarly but publicly available documentation from like Hellenistic texts and have been consolidating them in like digestible little novels, which are nice. I've been annotating a copy of um, this is Diana Paxson, and then I need to get through. I haven't finished Poor Rachel here, but lots of books. Oh, a big Joshua Cutchin fan. Got actually. Let's show off the Brimstone Deceit because that's an interesting one. He does a lot of like um, paranormal anthropology. I think would be a good way to describe it, where he collects people's paranormal anecdotes and sort of finds trends in them, and then very often correlates them to tropes that you see in myth. So, like with the Trojan feast, it's very much so in dialogue with the implications of eating food from the Fae or Persephone and the pomegranate. So, he takes people's paranormal experiences and kinds of looks at them through a sort of mythopoetic lens, but as like an anthropologist, and that's really fun.
How fun. Yeah. So if you're interested in any of those books that Bram mentioned, we will put the titles, the authors, and the links down in the description so that you can share those as well. And one of the coolest things about these interviews is finding new little areas to tuck into and check out. So if any of those interest you, go down the rabbit hole and see what happens. So I know that people feel different about this question. Some people are into it and some people are not. But what, if anything, is currently on your bucket list? What do you still want to do before you're done?
I would love to own a house. A big motive in moving was the possibility of owning a house because the cost of living in California is a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so owning a house, sort of building a garden. I would really love to set up a community garden, and I would really love to set up like a little free library. And like a pollinator garden would probably be up there too. I love traveling, and Beck is really, really fun to travel with, especially because uh, they're very gustatorian. So it's like, let's travel. Like when we went to Minnesota for the very first time and we were sort of checking out the different places, seeing where we wanted to live, we had a list of historic sites to visit, a list of like grocery stores to see, like what the hospitals and grocery stores are like, because those are parts of living somewhere. And then hitting historic like eateries, and the Juicy Lucy, which is a kind of burger, was created in Minnesota. So it was like, okay, now we need to go on a Juicy Lucy tour and like try these like local foods. So that's a ton of fun. So
That would be
uh,
fun. So how is a Juicy Lucy? Is it good?
yes, something I hadn't realized growing up in California is in California everything's deep fried in vegetable oil, like canola oil. In Minnesota, I went to Val's, which is one of the oldest burger places. They fry their fries in beef tallow, and
Huh.
it tastes so different. And it was definitely a big paradigm shift. Like it's like, oh
Interesting.
dang. I would argue that Mexican food and sushi is superior in California, but up north, dairy products across the board are super, probably because we're right next to Wisconsin.
Oh, sure,
So it's
sure.
interesting.
Yeah, sure. What's your favorite part of the day?
Ooh, that's one I think has been shifting. Like I still love golden hour, but now that I am like a 9 to 5 white collar person now, I see a lot more sunrises and sunsets, and they're really
Mm-hmm.
pretty. And I think part of it is also environmental because California is stunning. I
Mm-hmm.
love the chaparral and the mountains, but because you have the Sierra Nevadas and you have the coastal range, a lot of the smog kind of sits in the middle like a big bowl, especially like with the San Bernardino Valley. With the prairie, it's vast and flat. So
Mm-hmm.
there's no atmospheric um, disruption. So the sunrises and sunsets are incredibly vivid. It's very pretty.
Wow. When I lived in Idaho for a couple of eventful but not entirely regrettable years, one of the things I thought as soon as I got there is, why is there so much sky here?
Yeah, yeah.
Why do you need this much sky? What are you doing? You've been sky hoarding. Because
Well,
yeah, it's so flat and there's so much blue up there. It's almost, I felt like I was falling some of the time.
if I remember right, did you move from mountains to mountains? Did you grow up in Appalachia?
Well, that was Yes. So we were close to the mountain. We were mountain adjacent. But then I went to Guam, and then
Gotcha.
I went to England, and then I went to New Mexico. No, wait, I'm messing up here. Guam, New Mexico, England. And then after England was back to California or going to California, and then or then Idaho, and then back to California. So I was just all over the place. There was a lot of terrain differences there.
Oh
Now
yeah.
that sky, wow, for sure. So this is a question I just added in. Some of the earlier interviews don't have this. If you could, with full knowledge, go back in time to any point in time and tell your past self something with the understanding that your past self would at least be receptive, they wouldn't just blow you off. What time or what you would you go to, and what would you say?
Talking to me in middle school or high school, I'd say that getting older isn't as scary as it seems, and being an adult is awesome, actually. It gets better, and I suspect in terms of your viewership, I'd be pretty shocked if they were like preteen baby gays in there, but if there are, it gets better
It gets
because as an adult, you do have the freedom to choose your family and choose your friends and choose your path, and it gets less scary, which is nice.
That's very true. And it gets more rewarding as you have that freedom to make your own choices and go back to it, be proud of those choices, even if they didn't have the outcome you wanted. It's still a choice that you had the balls to make. So good on you. I like that. That's wonderful. Is there anything, now this can be your work. You know what we didn't talk about? I was going to say anything you want to promote, but you, Bram, are an incredible artist. And I have your art all over my house, as you well know. The giraffe well, there are two giraffes that you did for Eric that are just treasured, his favorite giraffes, I think. And so you're an amazing artist. I forgot to bring that up. Amazing artist. That being the case, is there anything you would like to promote or that you would like to promote for someone else?
Oh yeah. Um, I did forget to mention that I'm an artist. I do
You are an artist.
mostly pet portraits recently,
Now
but
we
I'm
can screen share.
too. Ah, yeah, that's a thing. I
That's
remember Joe. Joe, yeah,
Joe did,
Joe's
yeah.
really awesome. Yeah.
It takes a little bumbling and figuring out, but folks, we got nothing but time here. So
Yeah. So there's that. Oh, and then in terms of other things to promote, I mentioned Fabian McKenzie's books. I met him through NoDE, which is a Dionysian community, and they particularly have an emphasis on Dionysus as the liberator. So very inclusive and very cool. And they also coordinate with Temple of Dionysus to make calendars every year, which I can include a link through
great.
if you would enjoy having a pagan themed wall calendar. Oh, unless I closed the window. Did I did I do an oops?
We're still here.
Where there it is. Okay, cool.
Yeah. So
Not sure.
one of my other friends, Guion Raven, who is a wonderful author as well, is a major Dionysus person. So that's two that I know. That's two.
Yeah, and
So
it's interesting. Oh, go ahead.
no, no, no. We're still go, 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 go.
Got you. And it's interesting too because with Dionysus, it's really easy to look at him on the face of it and be like, oh, party boy, sex, drugs, and rock and roll. But when you're talking about epithets and accolades, there's like the sort of emanation of Dionysus I work the most with is more Dionysus the Liberator, but also Dionysus the god of madness and body horror. like the more of the eldritch Dionysus, or the chthonic Zagreus. But that was a big personal event in my life when I was breaking up with my ex. Because being at home was not a particularly hospitable place to be. I would go and just walk for miles, and that was just a religious epiphany I had at one point as I was just walking, and it was just this, talking about the clairs, just that clair sentience of just a feeling of, hey, I'm here. And it was like, oh, huh. So it's one of those things where I didn't philosophically seek out Dionysus. He just kind of like Kool-Aid manned his way into my life. And I'm like, oh, okay, this is a thing now.
That was the experience Delita had with Loki. And I will get around here to talk about Loki. But
Ooh,
it's such a blessed experience when you feel like a god chose you rather than, oh, this one's interesting, I'm going to explore this, or I'm going to explore this one. No, when they get you by the shirt collars and just pull you right up there, it's quite an experience. So I'm glad you had that.
yeah, me too.
Yeah. So anything you want to add before we finalize? I'm just so glad that you're here. So glad you could take time to talk to us. Thank you.
Yeah, me too. And that's super fun. Yeah, I think that's it for the notes I had written for myself. Being peak Virgo with Virgo in three different chart positions, I'm like, I have notes for myself, and I
Notes, notes, notes. Yeah. See, I've got definitely. Oh, you can't see notes, notes. I just ordered more of the tiny legal pads. I'm trying to move from steno pads to the tiny legal pads and consolidate my notes a little bit more. And I don't know about you. I sometimes have trouble throwing out my notes after I'm done with them. I want to
same.
keep them as some kind of record that no one will care about after I'm gone.
I had to make a rule for myself that if it's older than 5 years old, I have to give it a serious audit. If it's older than 5 years old, and when was the last time I looked at this thing? But I also have a hard time with that. I've started using things like Google Keep and digital note taking, but I still do analog work note taking at work, largely because in terms of like I think of the tenets of power. It's like to know, to dare, to
Will and to
speak
be
and keep
silent.
silence.
Yeah.
Yep. The keeping silence is a big part of my job because I because I have a focus in contract law. I end up dealing with a lot of very personal information. So
Mhm.
where and how I take notes is something I'm really cognizant of, and a lot more like literally judicious about. But I still do a lot of stuff analog at work just because it feels like I can keep it away as a secret easier, if that makes sense. It sounds really, really arcane, but I hope that makes sense.
You know, when it's on the internet, it's public. So
Basically, that's
whether we
exactly
want
it.
it to be or not.
Yeah. No, that's
Yeah.
exactly what it is.
Someday
Because I could
I'll
burn
have a
after reading. Yeah.
someday I'll have a big bonfire. And all those thoughts will go away and be released out into the world. So, Bram, as always, it was such a pleasure to be here. I'm so excited to show off Bram to all my other people and say, yeah, I know the coolest people. Thanks for being here, and be sure to explore those links down in the description. And also, if you have comments for me or comments for Bram, we're pretty responsive. So put those down there and we'll get back to you. Thanks for being here, everybody. Bye bye.
Bye. Thank you.